Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts. Rudo and AJ coming at you today talking analytics in the NHL. A lot of you have requested a show like this, so we're going to dive into at least some of the basics of analytics for the league. First of all, AJ, how's Texas?
Warm.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's like 65 degrees.
Ooh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, today's actually the cold day.
All right, then. All right. Living the dream out in Texas. Let's start here. You first of all have the statistics that you will find in a box score. Goals, assists, points, some other things like plus minus hits, maybe TOI. Generally speaking, these are not considered advanced analytics in the NHL. Now, you can look at certain things like rates of these things per 60 and stuff like that start to get more into advanced analytics. But for the most part, advanced analytics attempt to give a better picture of how a hockey game gets made, right?
Yeah, and it should be noted that like box score numbers are a bunch of different things. It's shots, hits, block shots, giveaways, takeaways, plus minus, goals, assists, points. Lots of different aspects of the game are covered there. Outside of the fantasy hockey world, plus minus is
the bad stat.
More or less accepted as next to meaningless. I mean, it's not entirely, we'll say like 98% meaningless.
Yep.
I occasionally cite it as like a fun thing, like the other day when I was like, Eric Johnson's plus 15. That was mostly just me being shocked that was true.
The way I've always looked at plus minus is, one, it exists to point out outliers. For an entire season, Ryan Graves was here, and his plus minus was so far outside the realm of everyone else's that it was like, hey, look at this stat, this is crazy. And instead of taking away that Ryan Graves is a quality hockey player because of his plus minus, which he is a quality hockey player, don't get me wrong, when you see a plus minus outside the standard bell curve, that warrants further investigation to me. That means, okay, something weird is going on here. We should take a deeper look at it and figure out what it actually is. What is the anomaly here?
And typically, something like a plus minus being out of whack will when you look into it, the thing that you'll find, the guy's just really lucky, mostly.
Yep.
The on-ice shooting percentage with him out there is really high. Or the on-ice save percentage with him out there is really high.
Yep.
Or in the case of Ryan Graves, when it was totally out of whack, both.
Yep. Yes, there are
we'll get there.
A lot of real-time, well, at least one real-time, and a handful of sites that do track everything via NHL scrapers and otherwise. But yeah, we'll talk about those in a little bit. When we're talking about advanced statistics, one thing that is just kind of accepted at this point, we usually do our best to point this out when we're talking about it, but unless you are told otherwise, you should assume that advanced statistics are tracked at 5-on-5.
Yep.
It is assumed, unless someone says in all situations or in this specific situation, that if we're talking about CORSI or Fenwick, that it is at a 5-on-5 metric, because if you play on the penalty kill, of course the other team is going to have a bunch more shots than you do, or other situations like that. So, the specifics of that do go even further. People will talk about not just all situations are 5-on-5. They will also talk about CORSI close, which you have to look into it and make sure you know what you're looking at. But there are situations in games where we call it score effects. When a team is up by more than a couple of goals, it's going to change how the game gets played out. So just understand that every single advanced statistic out there has the context of when it's happening in the game.
Yep.
So keep that in mind. Assume it's 5-on-5 if you don't hear otherwise.
It's an important distinction just because when we cite statistics, we don't always say it. We try, but we just assume that everybody's on the same page that we are with 5v5. I like to sort by even strength a lot.
Which includes 4v4, 3v3.
Yeah, exactly. Because those 2 minutes where you're a 4v4 could be really important in a game. Yep. And you want to see how they do. So they usually, the difference between even strength and 5v5 in a single game is usually not very much, but over the course of a season can be a decent minute allotment.
Yep. So it's plus minus is interesting here, as Chad has mentioned. It is even strength only, but it does
kind of
also count empty net situations. So there are some weird things with plus minus.
Yeah, even that one has its caveats.
Yeah. So the other basic thing about advanced statistics, and this is one that I see people choose to ignore when it benefits them a lot. Everyone's guilty of this with statistics on a whole. The old saying is, if you want to lie using numbers, just take statistics. When you're looking at advanced analytics, they are meant to be taken as an entire picture. If you want to cherry pick a stat here, a stat there,
yeah,
it can tell you something, but it
can tell you a lot of what you want to hear, right, if that's what you're after.
Exactly. So if someone is talking about, oh, this player's CORSI is ridiculously good, but they don't have any other stats to back that up, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's one statistic in a bigger picture of statistics where it's like, all right, maybe they shoot a lot of pucks while this guy's on the ice, but maybe he also has an 80% offensive zone start, so of course they shoot more while he's out there. So it's a bit frustrating, I can understand, to get into advanced analytics when you need all of this prerequisite knowledge to even start really understanding the statistics. But it is something that has to be covered. So you're not taking these numbers and making wild accusations with them.
Yeah. Before we get into the analytics, which is really just shot metrics for the record, when we talk about fancy stats, it's really all about shots. It's all about pucks being fired in the direction of the net, generally.
And more or less, the goal of advanced analytics is to determine who is possessing the puck more, who's in control of the game. It's not always going to be 100% accurate because no stat reflects anything perfectly.
Yep.
But in most situations, the team that is shooting the puck more is going to be possessing the puck more.
Yeah.
So that is the goal there.
I do also, just before we move on entirely from box score stats, I do want to add that things like hits and giveaways and takeaways, the reason why we don't value them very highly, certainly giveaways and takeaways, is that they're not very meaningful. The definition of them, they're tracked very differently in different buildings. Hits, that's especially true, where Minnesota and the Islanders are known for being extremely generous with what they consider a hit.
Yep.
And the Avs play in Ball Arena, where they track hits much more tightly. So you don't see any of those 50 to 45 hit games in Denver. And it's not that those teams aren't playing physically, it's just that hits are tracked differently. So
there are a handful of arenas in the league where I am convinced that the giveaway takeaway stats are literally just made up.
This is a really important note as we get into the shot stuff too, because shots are tracked manually in buildings until they get proper puck tracking.
It's not a perfect system, no doubt.
Yeah, and there are some rinks that, and the Rangers are by far the most well known for this. Their shot data is skewed.
Yep,
heavily skewed. So things look an awful thing. The numbers there look a lot better. The chances there look a lot more dangerous than they actually are. So when you look at the Rangers' underlying numbers, you always kind of have that in the back of your mind. When you look at games that get played in Madison Square Garden, you have that in the back. And on a single game basis, most of these numbers that we're getting into are more of a, okay, this happened, the more you know kind of thing.
Yep.
It's just good information to have, more than it being super duper meaningful. As often as we cite these statistics on a night-to-night basis, it's also important that we understand that some nights they just don't matter as much.
Yep.
Some nights, game situations play a lot into these things. It's one of those things where it's just anything that any like on any short-term number, like with any statistic really, like anything in a small sample, only has a limited amount of meaning.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we note that, because I know that there's one guy that one of the guys that watches the pod regularly who comes in and is like, you guys over rely on analytics, which if you've ever actually read any of our game grades or anything like that, you'll know that that's total bullshit, because we regularly just disregard that stuff depending on what happens in games.
JT Comper.
Yeah, exactly. Like a guy has a 35% CORSI in a game. You know, he goes 4-11, but he scores a goal and an assist, and it's like pretty impactful game there, don't you think? Even though those numbers were bad. So that's an important factor, an important thing for us to note as well.
Do NHL teams give their shot trackers video assistance? Not live. Live, they're just tracking the game as it happens. There are certain projects out there. I know Corey Schneider. Does he still do the passing project? He used to do the passing project where he would go back and watch almost every single fucking NHL game like an absolute madman. Which the passing project, a whole nother thing that we're not going to get into on this show. There are some advanced statistics that are you're deep in if you're talking about that stuff. Getting
into the zone entries and like the stuff that Will Scouch tracks for prospects and things.
Yeah.
A lot of the transition, like we won't really get into the micro stats on this show.
Yep.
The ones that really dig into like the deep into the specifics of them. This is more of a people just trying to understand the basic analytics that we use on a regular basis, not the hardcore stuff.
What is technically considered a shot? Anything that hits the goalie in the offensive zone, or will a full ice shot still count? So this is a little bit up for interpretation based on the arena you're in and who's keeping track. Those things are fairly fast and loose, but for most things that people are actually interested in, the only thing anyone really looks at is shots from inside the blue line.
Yep. There are occasionally you will very occasionally see a dot on the outside of the blue line, but it's on the correct side. It's on the offensive side of the center ice line.
Yep.
Because usually those guys are trying to put it on net, and that's where in between the blue line and the center line is where there's interpretation. Where if a guy just flips a puck in and it takes a bounce and it ends up on net, he won't get a shot on goal for that. But if he slaps, he takes a slap shot and it's very intentionally on net, it will count. Yeah, most arenas will count that as an actual shot on goal, even if he goes to change or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of the shortcomings of analytics. I do think is the vagaries of how some of these stats are tracked. It's also just a reality of the future of statistics. Things are going to get more complicated in those regards.
Yeah.
And we might talk a little bit more about that later in the show with things like WAR. But anyway, should we actually start talking about a few of these stats? On the most basic level, I think the biggest mistake the advanced analytics community of the NHL made is naming their statistics like absolute garbage. CORSI is a horrible name. I get it, you're naming it after the guy who came up with the statistic, and that's great. I'm glad he's getting his recognition, but everyone in the world understands what shot attempts means. No one understands what CORSI means.
Right. Anytime somebody's like, I still don't get what CORSI is, and it's just like, it's shot attempts.
Yep.
Do you understand that when a player in the offensive zone attempts to shoot the puck, that's it.
Event.
That's a CORSI event. That's all it is. It's a shot attempt.
Yep. That's it. It's that simple. Same thing with Fenwick. Fenwick is shot attempts minus blocked shots.
Yeah. Fenwick is the one that gives that views shot blocking as a skill.
Yep. Exactly.
And so they're good to look at together, especially in games where there's a really high number of blocked shots. You get an idea of, hey, this team is really good at blocking shots. Then you want to look at Fenwick numbers outside of CORSI.
Wow, this team had 60 shot attempts, but only 45 Fenwick events.
Yeah.
Like, wow. So, like, 25% of their shot attempts got blocked.
Right. Like, never made it through, never stood a chance beyond that initial defender. Yeah.
But for the most part, most of the time when people are talking about advanced analytics, it's going to be them looking at CORSI.
Yeah.
Now, that comes in the event of, you can talk about raw CORSI, which is just the team's CORSI across an entire game, their CORSI for and against. You can take that number and look at a percentage-based CORSI 4%, which says how much of the CORSI events in a game happen to one team, or rather did they generate. CORSI 4 percentage is a number that generally should tell you who possessed the puck more in a game.
Mm-hmm.
You will see a lot of weird things happen with that number, though. We talk about it a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
Score effects are a huge thing that play into CORSI, because you'll see teams dominate 2 periods, get up by 2, and then play a third period where they have 3 shots on goal.
Yeah, they get outshot attempted 17-5. Yep. But of those 17 shot attempts, 6 make it on net.
Right. And
none of them are
areas. Yeah.
None of them are a scoring chance. There's no high danger chances, things like that, where it's just like, yeah, they threw the puck towards the net a lot more than you did that period, but you were playing defense, so it wasn't particularly meaningful.
So keep in mind, I guess, to reiterate, context always matters when it comes to statistics. It's the same can be said of normal counting stats like goals, assists, and points. You'll remember last year, through the first 20 games of the season, Belmar had 4 goals, but 3 of them were empty netters. So it was like, well, context matters. That's all I'm trying to say.
And when you look at like CORSI 4 percentage, the reason why it's preferred by the analytics community is that even more so still than expected goals, it is CORSI 4 percentage has proven to be more predictive accurately in the long run. In the short run, we're talking a game or two, a week of games, a month of games, it's good data to have, but you need a lot more games for it to be predictive. And that's why it's considered, I don't want to call it the gold standard, but it's like the preferred number that people kind of lean on, where when you start looking into a team, that's the first thing that you look for.
Yep. It's just like a regular hockey game or hockey season, right? And anyone can bust out a hat trick out of nowhere for one game.
Yeah.
But you look at that guy's entire season and he's got 6 goals. And it's like, okay,
The Sam Gagne 8-point game.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's crazy things happen in a vacuum, but a guy can shoot 30% for a week, maybe 2, maybe a month.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually it's going to normalize.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where advanced analytics start to mean more as the sample size gets bigger.
Yeah. And that's why when we always talk about this is unsustainable, this will stop, this is whatever, there's the reason that we do that is because we're familiar with the baseline numbers, like the general area of where most numbers are going to sit, things like shooting percentage. Yep. Mikko Rantanen's a freak of nature. He's like an 18% shooter in his career. So he has a different baseline than Darren Helm, who yep. I don't even know, but I would imagine probably sits right in the like 9 to 10% range.
Sub 10, I believe, yeah.
And then forwards and defensemen are very different. Defenders' shooting percentages are a lot more like in the 5 or 6 range, and the elite ones are in the 8 range. Yep. Which is why when Cale Makar shoots 10% and one of us is like, hey,
maybe this isn't sustainable.
This may not be sustainable. And they're like, people will be like, but it's only 10%. You see guys do that every year. And it's like, true. Typically guys who play forward, not a lot of defensemen shoot in that range very often. So it's there's always deeper context where you just keep going, and it's just a matter of learning and understanding them.
Certainly it wouldn't surprise you that defensemen in general are going to take lower danger shots than forwards just based on proximity to the net. But we can talk a little bit more about that in a second. Certainly, if you don't want to understand analytics because you're a numbers nerd like me, maybe you want to understand it so you can make some money on DraftKings Sportsbook. You can use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account with DraftKings. Right now, if you bet $1 on any NFL game, you can get $100 when either team scores a point. 1 point in an NFL game will get you $100 in free bets, which then you can go full analytics on the NHL and make that $100 turn into quite a bit more money for you if you make the right bets. So hit up DraftKings now. Use that DNVR code. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. We also have one of our newest sponsors in the Light Shade Dispensary. You can use code DNVR for 25% off your entire purchase over at a Light Shade location near you. You can shop online and get it set up for pickup through them. The way I was told to build this, I'm not a big weed person, but I was told you can buy an ounce and it's like getting a quad for free. So jump on the Light Shade train, go get yourself some great stuff. They have highest awarded tropical brands in Colorado, which is Escape Artists, which prioritizes priority. I can say words, quality and consistency, with ratios available in 1-to-1 and high ratio CBD 20-to-1. Always using the best materials and ingredients to deliver the premium experience. Wow, I can't talk today. They also have creams as well, which penetrate for deep muscle tissue discomfort, non-greasy, non-staining, fast absorbing, takes 10 minutes or less to take effect, and can last 2 to 3 hours. So be sure to check out Escape Artists at Lightshade. Again, use that DNVR code for 25% off or more. AJ, you're holding your mic right up to your fan, bud.
It's sitting on my desk. Yeah. I just set it down. I don't have any of the holders that I normally have at home. So I just straight put it down.
Yep. And obviously the Avs aren't playing right now, but the DNVR bar can still be your home for Denver sports for the teams that are doing things, and when the Avs are back in action, which hopefully will be very, very soon. As of right now, they're expected to return to play on the 27th. We'll see. But
do you have any confidence that happens?
I have confidence that some teams will play on the 27th.
Yeah, I think Colorado plays.
I I just don't know. It depends on how many dudes tested positive after, right? Like,
yeah.
If there's still,
and how many of those were symptomatic?
Yeah, if there's still 6-7 dudes on the COVID list on the 27th, it's going to be tough. But if there's
true.
a couple, yeah, they'll play. All right. Anyway, second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. AJ, where do you want to go next here? Do you want to get into like XGF stuff or danger of opportunities, things like that, or where?
Yeah, we had a question in chat about goaltending, and I would just like to say that there are numbers, there are metrics and things that track goaltenders. This may surprise you. It shouldn't, but it may. I don't spend a lot of time on those.
Yep. You can look into statistics like goals saved above average or quality starts, things like that.
Those are the ones that I use as quick references, but even like quality start, different places have different definitions of what a quality start is.
Yeah.
So even that one can get to be a little bit iffy at times.
Unfortunately, that's a problem you're going to run into a lot right now in the analytics community, especially as you get into these deeper statistics. There's no one set algorithm for some of these statistics.
Yeah, they all use kind of their own tweaks with their own regression models and their own emphasis on certain aspects of things, which is why instead of me looking at tons of different numbers from different places, I try and stay in the same couple of metrics, because I'm at least familiar with the thinking behind how they're calculated, and I'm just on that page.
Yep.
So it just makes it just a touch easier for uniform reasons to kind of pick an analytics place and more or less stick with it. It's always good to check the other ones out to see if there are differences, but you always kind of want to stay inside your own little room there, just for the consistency's sake, I think.
For the record, the sites that we use the most on this podcast are 1, Natural Stat Trick. This will give you individual game and entire player statistics for the season, things like that.
Yep.
Any of those player cards you see with a bunch of percentages on them, those are JFresh hockey cards.
Yep. He has a Patreon, working on getting a full-blown website up and running. But right now, it's just a Patreon with player cards and things, which we have examples of that we will get to later.
Yeah, we'll get to
and then I don't really use them a lot, but Evolving Hockey is great.
Yep.
It's a great resource. Again, just trying to stay inside my little zone. That's Evolving Hockey kind of gets left on the outside. Yep. The other one that I use is hockeyviz.com. I did not put that on the list because I'm stupid, but that's the one that with all the heat maps and everything that we show on every show when we talk about players and we dig into their analytics and what does he look like and blah, 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 blah. We're going to get into all that stuff here in a minute, but hockeyviz.com is where I start.
Micah does great work. So
yeah.
He's not on Patreon anymore. He recently switched it over to, I forget what it's called, but
he uses Stripe now.
There it is, Stripe.
Yeah, which is just it's what we use actually on our website for credit card processing.
Yep, worth every penny.
Yep.
So, yeah, goalie statistics are hard, and we're not goalie people. We'll leave it at that.
They definitely present unique challenges. Is my diplomatic way of saying, I don't know, man.
All right, so sticking to the skater statistics, AJ, do you want to go into danger of opportunities, or do you want to go into expected rates?
We can just start with danger.
Okay, so based on a divvy up of the offensive zone for the most part. Again, we're not really talking about shots coming from beyond the blue line. Every single shot is measured by how dangerous it is when it comes to a lot of statistics. You can use the danger of opportunities for obviously low, medium, and high danger chances, but this also affects expected goals for rates based on the location of the shot. And obviously the most dangerous shots come from the home plate area. If you don't know what that is out from the net, essentially to the two face-off dots, and then up to the top of the circles and across. But
draw a home plate.
Yeah.
In the offensive zone with the goal being in the middle of it.
Yep.
Like with the back line. Like where you draw
is
the goal line.
Home plate, yeah.
Yeah.
So it
depends on the organization.
Yeah.
How much GMs and coaches value advanced stats when it comes to player acquisition. It depends on the organization. That changes quite a bit from org to org. In the Avs case, it is a large part of their process. Yep. It's not the end-all be-all. Obviously, look at things like Jack Johnson, Curtis McDermott, guys like that. It's not the end-all be-all, but it's certainly part of their process. They absolutely look at it and they consider it, and they delve into that. It is also important to note that they don't use public data. They all have in-house proprietary stuff.
Yep.
Their own modeling. The Avs are one of the most advanced in the league at how much they invest in the advanced modeling that they do for things like aging curves, transition to their own systems, stuff like that. They all have. The Avs are heavily invested in this side of things.
Yeah, that stuff is going to be significantly more advanced than anything you're going to find publicly for the most part.
And as much as I beg and plead the stats guys for the Avs,
no shot.
Nope.
Unless you got a lot of money to give them.
No peek behind that curtain.
Yeah.
I get the thumbs down. Nice guys though, great guys.
So, look, obviously, the goal of every shot is to be as dangerous as possible, right? That's how you score goals. High danger chances lead to better scoring opportunities.
Yeah, those chances do not consider defensive alignments.
Correct.
So, like, if you're in a 2-on-1,
pretty good chance you're going to get a high danger opportunity.
Well, and if a guy, think about the goal that Nathan MacKinnon scored in Columbus a couple years ago, where he was in a 2-on-1 and he got a pass from, I think it was Landeskog, like just a couple feet inside the blue line.
Yep.
Not a high danger chance.
Nope.
That one-timer was not a high danger chance. I mean, it was maybe the most perfect and wonderful slap shot of his entire career, but not when analytically speaking, not a high danger chance. If there's a 2-on-2 and a guy gets a puck, finds its way through, and both defenders for some reason commit to the pass, and the puck gets through and the guy ends up totally alone, it does not consider that he's totally alone. It just considers where that shot is taken from. And it will, depending on the model, might consider what kind of shot it is.
There are a few out there that can take into account players' shooting percentage.
Yeah.
But things get wonky at that point. For the most part, danger of opportunity just comes from shot location.
Yep.
And
to reiterate, since Rob got here a few minutes late, CORSI is just another word for shot attempt.
Yep, exactly correct. And when it comes to danger of opportunities, essentially, when you take a massive data set of every single shot in the offensive zone from the entire league, it can then take those shots and cross-reference them against how many of those shots from a specific location are a goal. Higher shooting percentages from that location means the shot is more dangerous. Because yes, while there are locations that you're going to see more shots come from better shooters, you're also just going to see, as no one should be surprised by, most of the time, the closer to the net you are, the more likely you are to score a goal.
Yep.
Just reality.
Yep.
So get close to the net if you want to score, turns out. And then continuing down this path, we're also kind of just explaining how you start to calculate expected goals for as well.
When you see that Jack Johnson finishes a game with 0.03 expected goals for, how the hell does that happen? Well, that means in that game at 5v5, Jack Johnson was on the ice for a shot attempt or a combination of shot attempts that all added up to 0.03 of an expected goal.
Yep.
Now, these add up over the course of a game to, 1.89 expected goals for a 5v5 or whatever. That means that the goalie doesn't have to, if he gives up 4 goals in that game, he's from an expected goals model, he's had a bad night.
Yeah, he got bodied. Go ahead.
I'm good.
The one other thing I wanted to mention that I think we kind of forgot to say, when we're talking about CORSI for or expected goals for or any of these statistics, another thing, very, very important, unless otherwise specified, this is on ice. This is not an individual player statistic. This is what happens when they are on the ice as a whole.
Right.
So
those do get tracked individually if you want to look at them. Basically never gets referenced by Rudo nor myself.
Yep.
Occasionally we will look into it if we want to see. If you see a guy has 0 shots on goal, if we get to a game where Nathan MacKinnon has 0 shots on goal or 1 shot on goal, we might look at it because you're like, what's going on here?
You look at that and it's like, oh, his individual CORSI events were 12 and he just missed the net 11 times.
Right, exactly. Then, you're curious. But for the most part, we don't look at the individual CORSI events very often.
Yep.
And never over a whole season. No, I've never once looked at it, individual shot attempts over an entire season.
Yeah, it's there are specific use cases for it, but a lot of the time the individual statistics are kind of in their own weird little box.
Yeah.
So just understand that we're talking about everything on the ice. So when Jack Johnson has a 0.03 expected goals for, that means when he was on the ice, everyone on the ice with him while he was playing had that level of expected goals for.
Yep, and that's what we mean when we say that's what his on-ice results were for that game.
Yep. So that is important to understand, especially when it comes to things like expected goals for and metrics like that. It's not an individual player's expected. It's the full time he was on the ice, everyone. So I have a couple other places we can go next, AJ, but I'm not sure where you want to go. I know we have some charts to get to and things like that.
Yeah, I'll save those. We can save those for last as we break those because we reference them a lot, and so I was just going to break them down individually pretty quickly. Yeah. So we can really just save that for the end.
Okay, we can get to that a little bit later. One other thing I want to cover is the concept of rate stats. So when we're looking at these things,
efficiency,
and it's also a normalizer, right? Because look at the league right now. Look at the Avs right now in the NHL. They've played fewer games than pretty much everyone else in the league, right? So when it comes to statistics like, not percentages, but total expected goals or things like that are generated as a counting stat, you would expect it to be lower than other teams because they've just simply played less time.
Yeah, their minutes distribution will be heavily in favor of, obviously, the guys with more games played.
Yep.
So you want to see the rate stats just to cut through some of the efficiency or through some of the noise and get to the efficiency stats.
And you will see, this is more outdated these days, but a lot of these rate stats at first, before advanced stats really took off, were tracked as per game, such as points per game is one that is used still a lot, especially on the NHL website. But the favored rate stat, at least in advanced statistics circles, is per 60, which means per 60 minutes played.
Yep.
So not a full game, per 60 minutes played by that player.
Yep. So theoretically, if that player were to have played an entire game, that's what he would have produced.
This is what the numbers would look like. Yeah.
Yep.
Granted, no statistic is perfect. That doesn't include things like potential fatigue and other stuff coming into that type of conversation. But
But the big thing that we do look at is points per 60.
Yep.
When you talk about rate stats, there are some other things that you like to look at. I like to look at shots every once in a while. I like to look at shots per 60, just out of curiosity, mostly because Nathan MacKinnon exists, and his individual shot rates are so freaking high that they're just fun to look at. But when you get into like points per 60, like right now, top 5 points per 60 guys on the Avs. Who do you think they are? Just real quick.
MacKinnon, Makar, Kadri. The thing about points per 60 is it comes sometimes from these guys that are playing like minimal minutes a night.
Yeah, it's Kadri, Nichushkin, MacKinnon, Burakovsky, and Landeskog.
Yeah, okay.
Nicholas Abe-Kubel is 7th in the Avs in points per 60.
Should not come as a surprise to you that, none of those are defensemen, because defensemen regularly play 24, 25, in some extreme cases over 30 minutes a night, right?
Yeah. Devon Toews is 8 and Cale Makar is 10th.
Which is impressive.
Well, and Byram and Girard are 11 and 12. And that really drives home like what a freak of nature Colorado's defense is.
And this is the highest scoring defense in the league.
Yeah.
And they're barely cracking the top 10 of their team.
Yeah, I bet if I were to, just out of curiosity, if I were to filter this out by points per 60 for defensemen across the league with the time on ice barrier,
I'm sure they'd be very high. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that the Avs are well represented here. Devon Toews 4th in the NHL, Cale Makar 9th. Yeah. Bowen Byram 18th, Sam Girard 20th. So they have 4 of the top 20.
4 of the top 20 rate scorers in all defenses in the league. Okay. Yeah. Not bad.
And that's with a pretty low time on ice. I had a 50-minute time on ice threshold.
Yeah. Could easily knock a couple dudes off if you went up to like 400, 500 minutes there.
Yeah. I mean, even if I just go up to 200, man, it probably knocks a couple of dudes out of there.
Yep. Yeah.
So points per 60 is basically just the efficiency of scoring. Yeah. If you go up to 200, the Avs have 2 of the top 14.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Oh, that's good.
Avs defense might be good. Okay. Any other stats you specifically wanted to touch on, AJ?
Not unless people have some questions before we get into the fancy the charts and graphs and breaking them down. If anybody has any questions, now would be a good time to toss them our way. And we can tackle the specifics that you guys are interested in before we get to the visual stuff.
One in chat already here. Does possession have as much weight in analytics as shooting or attempts?
No. The analytics that we are talking about that we use are used as a proxy for possession.
Yep.
There are metrics out there that do track actual zone time and possession and stuff. They're a little harder to get a hold of. They're also inconsistent. And they're not considered super meaningful because it's not rare that a team has tons of possession, 8 minutes of possession time, and then no shots.
There's a couple of assumptions made here, which aren't completely correct, but for the most part are correct. One, you can't shoot the puck if you don't have it.
Yep.
2,
that one is definitely true.
You can shoot it with through someone else's stick, kind of. It does happen. In more than 90% of cases, outside of some very extreme scenarios, if you have the puck, generally speaking, you're going forward with it.
Yeah.
Maybe not in an exact moment where you're circling around, but over the long run, you're moving the puck down the ice into the offensive zone.
Yes.
Throw it towards the net, generally. So, under those assumptions, shots are going to represent possession. Shots, shot attempts, whatever.
Yeah, they are a proxy possession metric.
Yep. So, yeah. Was J-Mac an analytical darling last season just due to his high Corsi and low TOEWS? Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And it goes to show you the value of offensive defensemen versus defensive defensemen. Because you look at a guy like Jack Johnson, who doesn't aggressively make plays with the puck, doesn't ever jump up into the play, doesn't really ever look to create offense. All he does is look to keep the play going. So not a lot of offense gets created, and he personally creates almost no offense.
Yep.
But a guy like Jacob McDonald, good old J-Con, he drives the hell out of play because he jumps into it and is all over the place, and every time he has the puck, he tries to shoot it. And he's always jumping into the action, and he's always circling, and he's always pushing the puck forward, which is great for what he does, but you eventually have to play in your own zone, and that's where he really struggles, is actual defending in his own zone, the physicality of things, and this and that, which is why it takes a village to build a good defense. You need a little bit of everything. You need a variety of styles. You need more sandpaper to go along with your puck skill. Now, the Jack Johnson and Jacob McDonald are extreme examples of guys on the opposite ends of the spectrum, where Jack Johnson, you're just hoping, hey, break even defensively. He is a third pairing defenseman. You want him just kind of hanging out right around a league average defender, and you'll take that because he's not going to give you anything offensively. But with McDonald, he's not going to give you much defensively, but he's going to give all kinds of shot attempts. They're not going to be super quality, but when you get down to looking at it and you say, okay, which one of these guys do we want in our lineup? For Colorado's lineup, Jack Johnson would be a little more valuable, but McDonald is a better style fit when certain guys get hurt. And it's why having both is nice. It's why having both is valuable, because depending on the situation you're in, you could need both.
To tie this back into rate stats, essentially the comparison you're making is a high event player versus a low event player.
Yeah.
Now, both can be effective or detrimental. But with a high event player, you're going to see more shot attempts on both sides of the ice.
Yep.
With a low event player, you're going to see less shot attempts on both sides of the ice.
McDonald is about as high as event as you'll find. Yeah. We call him the chaos machine for a good reason here.
And again, this is going to play in game situations. You have a 2-goal lead with 10 minutes left in the game. You want the game to be as low event as possible. You want to give up as few opportunities as possible. You don't really care that much about generating more opportunities for yourself.
Yeah.
Flip side, if you're down by 2, you don't care if they score again. You need goals. So you're trying to generate as many opportunities as possible.
Yep. There's a reason that Jack Johnson plays on a PK and is out there at the end of games trying to shut it down.
Yep.
You want him to be a low event player. You want that part of the game to be as low event as possible. Ipso de facto, you throw him on the ice.
There you go. Just that simple. We are brought to you by Green Mountain Dental. You can get up with them just 15 minutes from downtown to make sure your teeth are taken care of. Get a cleaning, x-ray, and exam, and you will get a free Sonicare toothbrush to help you take care of your teeth at home. So go hit up Green Mountain Dental today for that. And then you can go on over to Chevalier Mortgage. The Denver housing market, prices have actually come down a little bit. a little bit. It's still completely ridiculous, but a little bit. So maybe it's slightly more affordable for you right now. And Chevalier Mortgage has you covered. Both Mike and Virginia have been doing it for well over 15 years now. So they know what they're doing, and their ultimate goal is to take the stress out of buying and refinancing. They strive to give their borrowers options with their full financial picture in mind. Mike is a certified financial planner, and with the highest level of integrity, also putting their borrowers first. Even if you already own a home, you can refinance. If you have something like mortgage insurance, chances are you can make this bubble work for you. Prices are still crazy, so maybe go make yourself the money. You can find them at dnvrmortgage.com, where you can get a free consultation and enter to win some free DNVR merch. Or you can call Virginia directly at 303-257-6578. Last but certainly not least, we're also brought to you by Sexy Pizza, the East Coast style pizza, New York style, I guess, pizza here in Colorado. If you want some of that, we do regularly have them at the Broncos tailgate. I know we've started doing the Nuggets party bus too, where I think you can get your hands on some of that. So and there you just pay for the tailgate ticket. It's completely free. The pizza comes included along with some beer. So free pizza, usually pretty good pizza, provided by Sexy Pizza. When you love it, you can go to their actual location and get their pizza whenever you like. Highly recommended. Be sure to check them out. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm ready to jump into some of these charts and graphs if you are, AJ.
Let's do it.
All right. Should we start? I'm just going to start at the top of these that I see listed here. So I guess we'll start with Jay Fresh's. We can start with MacKinnon or Kuemper, either one.
We'll start with Kuemper. Just start with goalies because it's just going to be me shrugging.
Okay.
They exist.
Yep.
Now, these player cards are typically, as you can see, they're weighted across a 3-year period here.
Yep.
And that's where the WAR percentage comes from. The WAR percentage, this is just him being in the 78th percentile, right?
Yep.
That's all that means.
His wins above replacement, which is what WAR stands for, is the 78%. WAR as a stat is trying to be a catch-all, right? It's trying to conglomerate all the statistics in the league into how much a player actually helps his team win hockey games.
Yep.
I will say, always take WAR with a grain of salt. Every iteration of WAR that you're going to find anywhere is going to have biases based on the weights put onto it by its creator.
It famously, the sport that actually came up with this and actually implements it really well is baseball. And they have 2 different WAR formulas that are regularly cited in almost all analytics conversations.
Yep.
It's, are you using, I prefer baseball references, WAR.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So it's important to note that while its attempts are being made in hockey, they're still not great. It's still in its infancy. And 20 years from now, I think we'll have a much better feeling for these types of numbers.
Yep.
They're nice to look at. The J Fresh cards here, this one, for the goaltender, you can just see how Darcy Kuemper does, even strength PK, high danger, medium danger, low danger. And again, quality starts, great starts, and bad starts are all something that are subjective. It all depends on what that definition is for that particular model. Rebound control, consistency, things that
a little bit more
we try to quantify for goaltenders to try and help us, but definitely are difficult to do.
Yeah. If you go to MacKinnon's chart, you'll see for a skater, it's certainly a little bit clearer than with goaltenders. Again, some defined by role, whether it be even strength or power play or penalty kill.
Yep.
But then they also talk about finishing, which is shooting ability.
Yep.
And then they have some rate stats as well.
Yeah, and then the quality of competition, quality of teammate. of those, the one that gets cited most often is quality of competition, and the one that has the biggest impact on a player is actually quality of teammate. Yep. Quality of competition is not nearly as important as quality of teammate.
Yep. You can only play with the guys you're out there with. So,
yep.
Yeah. So these JFresh cards are
they're great. They're really good snapshots of players.
Look at a player.
Yeah, yep. kind of a players, and over a 3-year period is really nice because you can see those on the right side. They had the graphs with the individual breakdowns with the keys. I just assumed that you know how to read a chart, so I wasn't going to explain that part to you. Where blue was offense, red was defense, and the dotted line is finishing. I guess I did explain it to you.
There you go.
But you can see him in each individual year, how he does there. And then those numbers on the left are what those percentages are across all 3 years, with the most recent year being the most heavily weighted of the 3.
Yeah, I do want to reiterate, advanced statistics are important.
They're great.
They show a lot of actual real data that can support ideas or what a player does and doesn't do.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that you should not watch hockey games and just only look at the statistics.
Yeah.
The eye test is still worth something for a lot of situations.
Yeah, because if you throw up the DEVON TOEWS one, if we have it.
There it is.
So you throw this guy, looks like the best defenseman in the NHL.
Yep.
But then you do look at something like a quality of competition and you say he's facing legit quality of competition. Mm-hmm. Is he facing the absolute toughest assignment that he possibly could be? No.
Yep.
And so you look at that and you say, okay, well, I want to consider that as part of the conversation for best defenseman in the NHL.
Sure.
He's obviously statistically here. I mean, you look at it. He's elite. Guy's crazy. But you do want to, okay, hey, you look at your quality of competition, you say, all right, might be a little lacking compared to a different guy. But that is, you look at that and you're saying that's an elite hockey player.
Yep.
It just is. And then when you say, hey, the 36%, he must not be very good on a power play. But then you consider that's where you dig into it and you look at the actual role that he plays and you say, oh, he's used on the second power play, which sometimes only gets 25 seconds to try and do its job.
Right.
And if he doesn't score in those 25 seconds in 4 different power play opportunities for 5 games in a row, yeah, I would say those power play numbers are probably not going to be very good.
Well, and you look at, some of those power plays when you're playing with an injured team, the players he's passing to on that
right.
unit include Tyson Jost.
Yeah, and this is where quality of teammate won't get calculated because it's only at 5v5.
Yep.
And the quality of teammate and quality of competition on special teams aren't factored into that.
Yep.
So that's where you're like, oh,
all right.
The more you know.
Looks like our next chart is a Wowie chart.
Is this the spider? Okay, yeah. So this is tough for a lot of people to read, and I debated on just not messing with it, but I did want to touch on it to let people know that these do exist. Again, they're hard to read, but if you look at this, it shows you Nathan MacKinnon and his on ice results with other players.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, you just have to be able to read this.
Read the chart. Yep.
Yeah, you have to. I can't. I don't know how to explain that to you in a way that the key doesn't. But basically, the blue boxes are MacKinnon. You see MacKinnon in the little gray box is his baseline, and then you see the blue box is MacKinnon without whichever teammate, and it's got their number, and the red box is the player without MacKinnon.
So
the blue box is MacKinnon without that guy. The red box is that guy without MacKinnon and the impacts that they have.
Just as an example, at the very top there, you'll see the 92 in red. So Gabe Landeskog without MacKinnon, gives up very, very few goals against per 60.
Yep.
He also scores a lot. But yeah.
None of these are my advanced statistics. I use everybody else's data and incorporate it into my work.
Yeah, most of the charts we will use come from Micah, which is...
Yeah, come from Hockey Viz. It's my preferred place to go. It's the easiest ones for me to read. And he has some wild-ass ones that I just left out of here where you're just like...
some crazy, crazy stuff that he's got on there.
Yep.
Okay. Next up, it looks like the saving and finishing charts, which these will be team-wide. We often will use player-specific ones as well here. But
yeah, I like these because it really gives you an idea of where teams are shooting from. And in this case, it's where the one on the left is where teams are scoring their goals.
Yep.
You really get an idea of like where the goals get scored from in an NHL across NHL.
Yeah, I do want to talk about this, and this is just kind of like one of those weird things. You'll see the Avs expected goals for in all situations there is 92.4, and they have 113 goals. Quality NHL, high-end NHL players regularly outperform their expected goals for. So it's not like this is some impossible, unsustainable thing. Wow.
Yep.
The Avs goal pace is fairly ridiculous. It's not unusual for high-end offensive teams to outpace their expected goals for.
Yep, the Avs have done it a couple of years in a row.
So it's not... Advanced statistics are weird. You can't take things necessarily at face value where you see one thing is higher than the other, so that means it's going to regress.
Yep.
You have to understand how the stats function together at times, which...
Yep. Skill level plays a role into it, and it's hard to figure out like where's the skill, right? Where does skill begin or where does skill end and luck begin?
Yep.
And that's just understanding. That's really more than anything else, understanding outliers.
Yep.
When a guy shoots 22%.
Shout out PDO as well.
Yeah.
The closest to a luck statistic that the NHL has at the moment. If you don't know, PDO is just on-ice save percentage plus on-ice shooting percentage for any given player when he's out there.
Yeah.
It's a statistic that generally trends towards 100.
Yeah. It's represented in 1,000.
Yeah. 1.000, yeah.
Yeah. And it gets most teams that are absurdly lucky hang out in the 110 range. In the short term, over the course of a season, it's more like 105.
Yeah.
And then the teams that are absurdly unlucky hang out in the like 970 range or below.
Anything below like 960 is ridiculous.
You are so fucking snake bit at that point that you're wondering what you did to piss off the hockey gods.
Yeah, you've done something wrong along the way.
Yeah. For example, the Avs were one of the unluckiest teams ever in 16-17, and their PDO at 5v5 was a 970.
Yep. All right, we have the power play heat map. So if you don't know, this chart shows where Colorado is in the PK side, where they're getting shot at from in the zone, and on the power play side, where they're shooting the puck from. The orange areas being where they shoot more from, and the purple areas being where they shoot less from.
Yep.
And then you have the XGF and XGA stats, which are per 60, and then the plus is relative to the league.
The big thing here is locations, looking at where the shots are coming from, and then looking at the percentage. I don't ever really honestly look at the actual XGA per 60 number.
Yeah.
Because
not super relevant. Yeah.
It's not incredibly important, but it is nice to know the percentage tells you where it is relative to league average. So in this case, the PK is brutally bad because it is 16% worse than your league average. And your power play is 13% better than your league average in terms of the power play, it's creating chances and dangerous chances, and on the defense, on the PK, it's allowing chances. The fact that the entire area right in front of the net is just like it just looks like a.
Right.
I guess it doesn't really look like anything. It's just an orange blob. That it's just that area right in front of that's a huge problem.
Well, and here's how like real world application of this works, right? The Avs pull up this PK chart and they go, okay, our system is not defending the net front well at all. They need to do a better job of that. You look at the Avs. If an opposing team is looking at the Avs power play one, they're saying, wow, the Avs love to shoot the puck from the right circle. Maybe we should shade that a little bit better.
Well, the problem with the Avs power play is you can see
the MacKinnon spot on the left.
Well, there's a couple of areas right in front of the net is obviously a huge problem.
Yep.
Because they're doing damage immediately in front of the net. Now it's a limited area as it obviously doesn't cover the whole thing, like what they're giving up on their PK, but it's right in front of the net. So you want to worry about that, but you also have to worry about where Mikko stands, where Kale stands, and where MacKinnon stands. That's looking at it and just being like, great.
They got threats from everywhere.
Yeah.
And you can see when you compare the two, the Avs tend to do a little bit better of a job of preventing teams from penetrating from the half wall on the penalty kill as they do themselves. But there's also a royal road right down the middle, which isn't great. These charts also apply to 5-on-5, which we have one for Colorado here. And you can see it's significantly better on the defensive side for the Avs at 5-on-5.
Yeah. For the record, both of these were world class last season. They were both in the 20s.
Which is outrageous.
Yeah. Like absolutely freaking crazy. I'm not sure what else to really say about this. It just shows
application of it at 5-on-5. Yeah.
It shows a very good offense and it shows a very good defense. I can tell you just from keeping track of these things because I look at them pretty regularly. That defensive chart has consistently gotten better as the season has gone on. The offensive chart it's gotten better, but it hasn't really been on like a consistent trajectory. It's been pretty they've been good most of the year. When you consider the injuries and the lineup changes and all the context that this stuff completely lacks, it's pretty impressive that they are
on the correct side of both
where they are,
defense and offense. Yep. Next up, we have some year-to-year statistics. This just shows that you can see the change of statistics. That these are fresh, but
these are moving. These pop around pretty frequently. This is last year's to this year's. These will go away once there are enough games played for last year's.
Yep.
And you can see the biggest thing here. Like he's pretty much in the realm of everything. He's
significant change. Yeah.
He's still an elite player. He's still producing at a crazy rate. He's still doing everything at a high level. Even the defense dropping a little bit. It's still, 53%. It's certainly not a bad defense. It's trending in the wrong direction, but it could be better there. But
scoring goals.
The biggest thing here, it's really just the finishing.
Yep.
Penalties is how often a guy takes penalties. MacKinnon doesn't take very many, so this year he's taken very, very few penalties.
Yep. And then continuing on with MacKinnon, you have these charts we use all the time, especially when the Avs acquire a player's specific isolated impacts. You can see even strength and the little bit of power play and penalty kill too.
Yeah.
MacKinnon is just a ridiculous death weapon on the power play, as you can see.
Yeah, that plus 10% on the power play is crazy. The plus 17% at even strength is one of the higher numbers in the NHL that you will see. The minus 2% isolated on defense is really encouraging. And these are isolated impacts.
Yep. to the best of their ability, what this player brings specifically. And what we'll regularly do is we'll take a player's isolateds and then compare them to the team's overall numbers, and you can do a little bit of a with and without you chart where it's like, wow, these numbers are significantly better with Nathan MacKinnon compared to the team average.
Yep. Shootiness is how much a player shoots.
Yep.
Just the rates of his shots.
Which MacKinnon shoots a lot.
He shoots a lot, but he also has the puck so much.
Yep.
That his numbers are actually
relative to. It's not like OV levels where his shootiness is like plus 23 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, a guy that doesn't possess a puck very much that fires a ton of pucks at the net.
Brent Burns style.
Yeah. Although in a year like this one, like Nazem Kadri's is probably pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd have to go and look just to see. So you guys were wanting to see Devon Toews' PK versus Eric Johnson's. I'm not gonna download them and upload them to the StreamYard right now. But Eric Johnson was, I think, plus 24%, and Devon Toews is negative 18%.
Just a minor difference there.
Yeah, so your guys' eye test is matching up with reality. Yeah, that thing won't stop moving around, will it?
Just keeps dangling behind it.
Dude, I'm in my nephew's like playroom right now. So
oh yeah, look at that. Give me some of those toys.
Also where I'm sleeping. These bunk beds. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
So that's all the charts we have.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, I want this to be like the show that we refer to, so I want to leave no stone unturned here. If anybody has any other questions, wants to see anything in particular, now is absolutely the time, because I don't want to revisit this. Maybe like once a year we do something like this just as a refresher, because people are always asking. No, man, I sleep on I'm not climbing all the way up top. I would have anxiety the entire night about rolling out of it because I'm a really violent sleeper.
What is yours isolated PK percentage? Whatever it is, it's going to be pretty small sample size. He has not played very much PK, so take it with a grain of salt, I would say. But I'm sure AJ will get it here for us in a second.
It is plus 45% in 19 minutes.
So really bad, but
really, truly awful. Truly awful.
Yeah.
I know somebody wanted to know what McDermott was earlier. I'm sure I haven't actually looked at it in a while. It got better.
It's going to be weird too, right? Because it's not going to divvy up his defensive and forward outings. It's just going to be total,
But his isolated is -9 on offense and plus 24 on defense, and that got better.
Yeah, and that's still bad.
Yeah. 4 minutes with McDermott on the PK, however, is a -49%.
Play him on the PK.
Yeah. Play him on that 5-on-3.
Put him with Makar on the PK.
It was just him standing in that 5-on-3 against Nashville, just watching them not do anything.
Having a chat with KUEMPER, like, what's up? I guess it wasn't with KUEMPER, it was Frankie, but...
For the record, the offense has gotten better with McDermott on the ice to the point where it's at plus 4%.
So, functional at least.
Yeah, the 5v5 offense. 5% on offense and 4% on defense. Which has gotten a much, much better. On defense, it was at like plus 50% at one point. It was insanely bad.
Not killing you at what it is now.
And plus 4% is very survivable.
Plus minus is analytics. Yeah, I mean, so plus minus is a very early, poorly thought out version of an advanced statistic, right?
It's a terrible, terrible stat. My favorite example of this is the game. Do you guys remember the game a couple of years ago where Brad Stewart scored from center ice?
Yep.
against Chicago, he didn't get a plus for that because
he was on the bench when it went.
He dumped the puck into the zone and went for a change, and the puck went in while he was on the bench, so he actually didn't get credit for that. He didn't get a plus for a goal he scored. So that right there, obviously that's a hilarious anecdotal outlier. But plus minus is it's we said this at the top of the show. It's 98% useless.
There's just too many factors that go into plus minus for it to really tell you a whole lot.
The only ones that ever make you go, huh, are the extremes. The extremes.
Yep.
That's the only thing that the extremes tell you is I need to dig into this further.
Yep, exactly.
Like you look at Erik Johnson and his plus 15?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. His plus 15 right now, and you dig into his numbers and you're just like, oh, I would be willing to bet that he is he's got a really high PDO. And if I look him up real quick,
I'm sure that he does.
Let's see if my initial thought is correct.
Survey says
1038.
Yeah, that's fairly high.
An insanely high PDO.
Yep.
Oddly enough, the guy who has the highest PDO also has the highest plus minus in DEVON TOEWS. Where they differ, however, DEVON TOEWS' 5v5 on ice save percentage is 93.39. Erik Johnson's biggest thing here driving his success is his on ice shooting percentage is 12.33 at 5v5.
Pouring pucks in.
Yeah, 12.33 is a very high on. That's the Avs as a team are shooting just over 12% with Erik Johnson on the ice at 5v5. So he's benefiting from truly elite shooting and okay goaltending. His goaltending is fine.
The concept of WAR is wins above replacement, which is essentially also win shares. It's trying to quantify how many wins can be attributed to a player.
Versus a replacement level player, a baseline, your absolute most average, forgettable NHL player. How many more wins per valuable, or how many more wins is that player worth?
In years, Sheldon Dries is basically your example of a zero WAR player. Not positive, not negative. He just exists. WAR is a relevant stat. It's designed to be an overarching coverall that it kind of quantifies everything as a one stat. Because of that, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
There are a lot of inaccuracies or biases that go into them. There's also GAR for NHL is another version of it, which is
goals above replacement. Yep. The big thing with the Moneyball movement in baseball, which is where all of this kind of started, was that if you go and watch the movie, Jonah Hill explains it pretty succinctly, and he says how teams value wins is fundamentally broken in baseball. You need to generate X number of runs to win X number of games on average. That will get you to where you want to go. If you're trying to win 95 games, you need X number of runs to get there. Just historically speaking. And so the goals above replacement is trying to do the same thing. Is you're trying to say, okay, if we're gonna win 55 games in the President's Trophy, how many goals do we need to score to get there? And then you work backwards from there, trying to figure out how many goals does this guy prevent, how many goals does this guy generate, and then you just it all adds up over time. All right, this guy's worth this number of goals, this guy's worth this number, and that's how you build your team from there. That's how modeling works.
Baseline player is the same regardless of position and TOI and all of that, by the way. You're either a net positive or a net negative player when it comes to WAR. That's all there is to it.
Yep. And the big thing is that WAR is way more useful in baseball because almost everything in baseball is individual based.
Yep.
And hockey is still such a team component. Very, very little is accomplished individually in hockey. Almost everything requires at least the use of two teammates.
If it's not, it's on a highlight reel of Cale McCarr going coast to coast or something like that. It doesn't happen very often.
Right. And so it's really important to keep in mind that the war stuff, the GAR stuff, all of that is, like I said earlier, it's in its infancy in hockey for a reason.
Yep.
It's trying to, like, where the analytics community is trying to translate it, trying to get it to fit hockey. But it's running into all the same problems. I mean, it's just not an individual sport the way that baseball is, where everything can be boiled down to this guy does this.
Yep. A couple more questions from Billy here. When you're looking at a possible trade target UFA, how do you take into account team systems feeding into how that player actually will fit into the system? Do you look at relative percents? So AJ kind of already mentioned this, but their internal metrics are going to do a lot better job than anything available to the public in doing that. But yes, teams will absolutely look at how a player might or might not fit into their systems. Yeah,
and when you look at recent Avalanche examples, let's look at some of the big wins. Nazem Kadri was an easy one. Yep. He was a proven top 6 center who had multiple 30-goal seasons in his career and was just being overpaid to be a third-line center on a team that had 2 elite center options, 2 high-end center options. That was just an easy one. That's not one where you have to look at very much modeling. That's one where you're probably doing more consideration of his contract status at the time of the trade and saying, hey, we get a 2C signed for less than $5 million for 3 full seasons. Sign me up, dog. But the other ones, when you look at Andrei Burakovsky and Val Nichushkin, you consider their roles, you consider what they did well and how they fit into what you're trying to accomplish. As a means of, okay, well, how can this guy help us? Okay, Andrei Burakovsky, you needed a little more offensive punch. The Tyson Jost, JT Compher, Alex Kerfoot didn't get it done. You had to move Kerfoot anyway. So you took that away. You needed to figure it out. Okay, you figured it out. Yeah. You went and got Andrei Burakovsky to replace some lost offense and then gave him a bigger role under the belief that this guy can flourish. And then you also dig into some of the micro stuff. As a transition player, he was really good. He really excelled. Well, you play a very transition-heavy style, so if he's good at doing that, it stands to reason he could help you in this way. Now, you're never really going to know, obviously, until you get the guy in there and he plays in that role for you. But that's kind of how you build the concept of a player acquisition.
The two different situations you're talking about, Nazem Kadri, an established player, you more or less know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Burakovsky and Nichushkin, you have to do a significant amount of projection with those players.
Especially Nichushkin, who was on the outs in the league.
Yep. And, you know, with the Nichushkin acquisition, there was a pretty low risk value there, right? If Nichushkin didn't work, it's a 1 year and he'd have been gone.
1 year minimum salary deal was, it is what it is.
But you have to be able to project these players into your lineup and roles. And if you can do that consistently, every NHL team in the league would like to hire you today.
Which is why you see Chris McFarland interviewing around the league, because his influence has helped improve Colorado's front office process 1,000,000 times.
Yeah. When we're doing our things in videos, we do our best to project a player into the Avs system. It's mostly from a stylistic standpoint. We look at what the Avs do well. We look at the way they like to play, and then you look at the player and say, okay, well, he's a high possession player. He likes to push pucks forward. He's good in entries, exits, whatever the situation he might be good in. It's a balancing act, though, right? You don't want to be too samey. You don't want too much of the same thing. Sometimes you need a Jack Johnson to bring a different look to it, or whatever.
As we've seen in recent weeks with the Curtis McDermott thing, like, look, we hated the acquisition. We hated the cost of it. We hated the playing of him on defense. And you saw those results. He produced horrible results.
Yep.
And then they moved him up to forward. He kept working. They wanted to get him in the lineup. They really liked him as a locker room guy. They really liked him as a kind of a crazy presence. if you fuck with the Avs, this guy will hunt you down and, scare the bejesus out of you.
Just to your face. Yep.
The Avs wanted some crazy. And so they went and they got some crazy. Hockey player be damned, because I can guarantee you the analytics guys were like, dude, no. The answer is no.
Hard no.
Yeah, but they wanted that personality. That's why I say it takes a village. Not every analytics don't drive every single decision, but they play a role into it. There's a reason that the analytics guys for the Avs, and I don't know for I don't, like, I can't confirm, like, on a personal, like, I haven't spoken to them and said, how'd you guys feel about the McDermott thing? But I would just be willing to bet that from their perspective, from what they do well, they looked at his on-ice results, they looked at his analytics, and they said, no.
What's the quote from Micah? He said, like, if an NHL team paid me to say no 3 times a year, I'd be worth it, or something like that.
Yeah, if a team wants to pay me $1 million a year to just keep them from making bad decisions a couple times a season, that was his whole basis.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we've covered all the questions coming in.
Yeah. If you guys have any last minute stuff, again, we want this to kind of stand on its own for a while.
Yep.
And then, yes, Andy did make some graphs for us. She's always had an open door whenever she wants to write. DNVR is the place we want her to do it.
If you want.
She did write a bunch of articles on the site. You can go back and dig into them. I don't remember what they're called anymore, but she wrote a series of them, breaking all of it down from the very basics to at the time, some of the more advanced stuff.
There's an actual PhD level dissertation on Nail Yakupov still somewhere on the site.
It's true. It was interesting.
The thing was insane. Shout out to Andy for that. It's crazy good work.
Yeah. She always did amazing work. It just took time.
Yep. All right. I'm just here seeing you guys say thank you. So I guess we're gonna wrap this one up.
We'll tag out. We'll see you guys on the other side of the holidays.
Yeah, we're not gonna be live tomorrow. It's Christmas Eve, so we hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. We will be back.
I tried to get us to do a show, but everybody else vetoed it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to go live by myself and just be like, hey, guys, what's up?
We're taking that one. If the Avs are actually playing or not, we'll certainly be live on Monday. There's a good chance the Avs are playing over New Year's Eve. So if they are, you can find our post-game pods, all of that stuff. We hope you all have a wonderful holidays, and we will talk to you again, I guess, on Monday.